Let's talk about climate change and man-made global warming. The Earth's climate is controlled by its orbit around the sun. During an ice age, we are 50 million miles farther from the sun than we are during a warm age. The glaciers started melting 17,000 years before man-made global warming. That is never told. Why? Because there's no money to be made in the Earth's orbit. There is money to be made from blackmailing CO2, oil companies, power companies, anybody. You remember, man made CO2 is something you do every time you exhale. Every time you breathe in oxygen, you breathe out man made CO2. So everybody is potentially guilt tripped into giving environmentalists money if man made CO2 causes climate change. The Earth's orbit doesn't have any money to give. Therefore, telling the truth about Earth's climate history is not very profitable. On the other hand, when you look at the last 2 million years of Earth's climate history and you realize that the Earth has an elliptical orbit. There's a gentleman called Milankovitch. Look up the Milankovitch cycle. That cycle tells you that the Earth elliptical orbit causes glaciers and melts glaciers. Since we go from 91 million miles to 95 million miles during our elliptical 100,000 year orbit cycle, that's the reason we have glacier maximums and glacier minimums. It has nothing to do with the car you drive, whether it's a Tesla or whether it's an F-150. It has nothing to do with man-made CO2. That's why the glaciers melted or started melting 17,000 years before man-made CO2. That's why we've had 20 glacier maximums and glacier minimums. Glacier minimums is when all the glaciers in the northern hemisphere melt away and the oceans rise hundreds and hundreds of feet. New York City has been underwater 20 consecutive times before man-made global warming, so man-made global warming has nothing to do with it. In addition, during glacier maximums, New York City has been under hundreds of meters of snow and ice for thousands of years, 20 consecutive times without man-made CO2. It's going to happen a 21st time, whether you drive a Tesla or an F-150. Man-made CO2 has nothing to do with the Earth's climate history, therefore it has nothing to do with Earth's climate future. It is strictly a guilt trip to make money, like witch doctors in the old days who would sacrifice a goat or a chicken that the witch doctor would get to eat. Environmentalists blackmail and lie to get money and power, just like a witch doctor does to a village. The witch doctor couldn't make it rain if you gave him a goat or a virgin, but eventually it would rain. The Earth has a climate history, which is how you predict the Earth's climate future. That climate history means we have glacier maximums. So when we're 95.5 million miles from the sun, we have glaciers. When we're 91 million miles from the sun, the glaciers melt and the Earth gets really warm. Then our orbit takes us 95.5 million miles from the sun and the glaciers return. The oceans dry up because all the water is locked up in glaciers. Then we start heading to 91 million miles from the sun. The glaciers melt and the oceans rise. New York will eventually be underwater, along with most of Florida, New Orleans, London, and Venice. It's happened 20 times before man-made global warming. It'll happen 21 times whether you drive a Tesla or you drive an F-150. That is Earth's climate history, and it is Earth's climate future. By the way, since the average human lives less than 100 years, what's going to happen several thousand years from now isn't really relevant to your life. I'm Tim. This is OrbitDeniers.com. Don't worry, the Earth's been through this many times before you, and she'll go through it just fine without you. Thank you. Please donate. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and please donate to orbitdeniers.com so that we can tell everybody else that Earth's climate future looks a lot like its climate past, and it has nothing to do with man-made CO2. By the way, man-made CO2 is good because plants breathe in CO2, they breathe out oxygen and give us food. Without CO2, plants die. If you go into the average greenhouse, it has 12 times the CO2 level of normal Earth's atmosphere. Why is that? Because the people that run greenhouses want to grow plants. If you got rid of man-made CO2, most of the trees would die and crop yields would significantly decrease. That means massive starvation, and basically they would kill the surface of the earth without CO2. No CO2, no plants. No plants, no oxygen, no food. So the Green New Deal is a pathway to human extinction. By the way, as we suffocate from lack of oxygen and starve due to lack of plants, the environmentalists like AOC want you to walk. I, on the other hand, will be driving a CO2 emitting car while eating and breathing in oxygen. That's the future I want. The Green New Deal is death to the planet, death to humans, and make you walk to your own suffocation and starvation. You have a choice to pick your path. I pick oxygen and food. Or you can pick the Green New Deal, which is a repackaged communism, and death to plants, death to humans, death by starvation and asphyxiation for lack of oxygen. Pick one. I know the path I'm going to pick. You are watching Orbit Deniers. Please donate so we can educate the rest of human civilization to the Earth's climate history. Therefore, you can know Earth's climate future. Thank you.